Last year's Lent course, Listening to God's World, was remarkably effective. It was partly how many people across Devon actually did the course. We estimate nearly 5,000 people. It was partly too how many new groups were formed to do this course. The questionnaire suggested that more than half the 500 or so groups were new groups, and most of these were ecumenical. It was partly too the positive comments we had from those who undertook the course and how engaging they found it. And you can still see some of these comments on the course webpage. But the real success of last year's course was mostly about what people did in response to taking part. While it was still running, many people plucked up the courage to talk to a non-church friend about how they saw the church and what they thought about the Christian faith. And that took quite a bit of courage for many people. But almost without exception, people reported back that it had been such a positive experience despite their worries. In fact, their non-church friends were often very pleased to be asked and to be listened to. There is a similar suggestion with this year's course, and I really encourage you to get involved. It was such a blessing to so many people. And people have continued to listen, even after the course was finished. It was designed to launch us all into a year of listening, when we all put ourselves out to really hear what people in our communities thought about the Christian faith and the church. And this is precisely what many people did, and I've been out and around to talk with some of them. I understand that last year you did the Lent course that was put on by the diocese, Listening to God's World. How did that go?
I think it was very interesting in the sense that it gave us a chance to think about the sort of things that we should be perhaps more aware of as Christians, as members of churches. The people who don't join us, that don't meet with us on either in a fellowship group or in services. And it was an opportunity to go out and talk to people like that.
We, as a group, decided to do the Lent study course. We met every week for 5 weeks, and each person in the group had a little go at running the group, which was really good and useful because it means that they can also put their own slant on that and how they would lead that group. That's how we decided to do it.
And part of the Lent course was sort of asking if you'd have a conversation with a friend who didn't go to church yet. Did you manage to do that?
Yeah. I had a problem to start with because I thought, how many people do I know whom I'm friends with, who I could talk to, that don't go to church? But then I realised that quite recently I'd formed a friendship with somebody and that was very interesting.
And I was amazed that they were prepared to talk about these subjects very openly and very frankly. It was quite amazing.
A couple in the group that had some really amazing times with people that they work with. One in particular ended up spending the Tuesday lunchtime discussing whatever the topic of that week was with his colleagues, which was a fantastic experience. Also, there was another member who bridged gaps with neighbours and was able to go around and sort of discuss things and asked if it was all right, if the questions could be asked, and then further things happened as a result of that. Really good.
I mean, I found it very interesting, and my neighbour who I spoke to, invited me in, and we spent 3/4 of an hour each week, I suppose, in conversation. It was often difficult to break off. Yeah. We chatted about lots of things, his life, what he was doing, what I was doing, but we also focused on the particular questions that were sort of suggested for each week. And that was very revealing about him and how he perceived the church. And it told me a lot about him as a person and his background.
It really was interesting that people did want church, even if they didn't actually come to the church. Maybe might never come, but they wanted the church to be there and available for them if they ever felt they needed it. And some of the answers to the questions were very interesting, and I think it was very fulfilling for us to hear the opinions of many different people.
The people we spoke to were really quite wanting the church to be there, wanting the church to be doing things. It just wasn't doing the things they wanted it to do. They weren't anti-church as such. No. You know, and they would wanted the church to be more involved on social issues. And I mean, I suppose that's because those were the friends we've got who are interested in social issues and peace and justice issues. And they felt the church should be speaking up. The church was a body that could speak out on those sorts of issues and should be doing so.
Discussing things about your faith is not always an easy thing to do, or a subject that you can broach with just any other member of the public or people you work with. And I think having the questions that we had helped us to think about how we could just start basic questions about our faith with other people that we work with and live with, and people that we see on a day-to-day basis.
All these kinds of experiences open up exciting possibilities for expressing our Christian faith in different ways. Ways that will connect with the kinds of people who just don't connect with the way of church that we're used to. Patient listening creates a foundation on which we can base some genuine and creative response. Things that will make the wonders of the Christian faith live and be relevant to people today. And that is what this year's course is all about. Once we've listened, once we're well connected with particular kinds of people in our wider communities, how do we respond? We learned last year about a listening God. We learned this year about a responsive God. How we respond to situations, especially difficult situations, says a lot about us. We can say a lot about God from the way He responded to all kinds of situations in Scripture. And people around us will draw clear conclusions about Christ and the church from the way we respond to what is going on in their lives. And that is what our first Bible study invites us to think about.